Hill Street Blues sent fictional criminals away every week. One man on this cast then played the father of a real 6-year-old who was abducted and murdered, and that broadcast rewrote federal law. Half of these faces are gone. One died while the show was still filming. Begin with the man every other character in that building answered to. Daniel J. Travanti played Captain Frank Furillo as the still center of a precinct that never stopped shaking, absorbing every riot, every union threat, every political telephone call, and answering all of it in the same low, unhurried voice. He made competence look like a moral position. Kenosha, Wisconsin, made him one of 5 children of Italian immigrants, his father working the assembly line at American Motors. Harvard, Princeton, and Dartmouth all wanted him as a footballer. He turned them down for acting, graduated Phi Beta Kappa from the University of Wisconsin, studied at the Yale School of Drama on a Woodrow Wilson Fellowship, and later took a master's degree in English as well. Then came nearly 20 years in parts nobody can name. The role that made him arrived when he was 40. Even then, the network almost threw it away. In its first season, the show finished 87th out of 96 programs on American television, the lowest-rated series ever renewed at that point. And Travanti said flatly that NBC tried their best to get rid of us. 4 episodes were stripped across 9 days in scattered time slots. The audience found it anyway, and 2 consecutive Emmy Awards for lead actor followed, out of 5 nominations, along with a Golden Globe. What the audience never saw was how close he came to losing the decade before any of that. Travanti was drinking badly. In 1973, he collapsed during a performance in Indianapolis and finally asked for help. He called alcoholism a disease of loneliness and secrecy. Sitting with R.O.H. New Barrett on NBC in 1981, he recited all 12 steps of recovery from memory on national television, at the same time as the writers were quietly putting his character into the same meetings. 2 years after that, he took a part that changed federal law. In Adam, broadcast on the 10th of October, 1983, he played John Walsh, whose 6-year-old son had been taken from a Sears store in Hollywood, Florida, and murdered. 38 million people watched it. The film closed with a roll call of photographs of real missing children, and 13 of the 55 faces shown that first night were found. A year later, the same broadcast showed 51 children and recovered 19 of them. Within 2 days of the 1985 airing, 5 of the 54 featured had already been located, and one of those children grew up to become the rapper Busy Bone. The last scene showed the Walsh family watching the Missing Children Act signed into law. Travanti was nominated for an Emmy for that performance too. He is 86 now. Prison Break, Criminal Minds, and Boss all used him after The Squad Room, and his final screen work was 4 years on NCIS Los Angeles, ending in 2019. Search the public record for a wife, a child, even a city he will admit to, and nothing comes back at all. He has kept his life almost entirely out of view since the year his face was on the cover of everything. And that silence is its own kind of answer. Furillo held a fictional city together every Thursday night. The man playing him had already put himself back together in private, and he has never once asked anybody to watch him do it. Roll call belonged to one man, and he was dying while he ran it. Michael Conrad handled those morning briefings the way a priest handles a service. Coffee, notices, one small human aside, and then the warning that closed every single one of them and became the most repeated line in police television. He said it with a weariness that made it sound less like a catchphrase than a prayer over people who might not come back. 55 years old when the show premiered, he had already been working for 3 decades by then. Born in New York City in 1925, Conrad served in the United States Army through the Second World War and then worked television steadily from the 1950s onward, through Car 54, Where Are You, and Perry Mason, and a long line of small parts. Sergeant E. Esterhaus brought him 2 Primetime Emmy Awards in consecutive years, and no other performance in his career ever came close to it. 3 marriages sit on his record. Denise McCluggage lasted a year. Emily DuMille lasted a little over 3. Seema Goldberg married him in January 1974 and was beside him at the end. No children appear anywhere in the public record. Urethral cancer was what he carried through the run, And by the third season, the absences were becoming obvious to anybody watching closely. The production worked around the illness rather than replacing the man, which is not something television is famous for doing. He died in Los Angeles on the 22nd of November 1983, aged 58, with his wife beside him. His body was cremated and the ashes were given to his family, so there is no cemetery anywhere carrying his name, no headstone, no plot number, nothing for a viewer to visit. The final episode he filmed reached the air that following February, and in the same month the show buried E. Esther House in a story where the sergeant dies in bed with the woman he loved. Then the writers did something quietly devastating. They had the other officers keep saying his line at roll call for the rest of the season, so every week the squad room said goodbye to him again. E. Esther House ended every briefing by telling a room full of people to be careful out there. Conrad was saying those words while carrying the one thing that no amount of care was ever going to stop. Joyce Davenport came into that station like weather, cold, fast, tailored, always right, and then she went home at night to the captain she had spent the day dismantling in open court. Veronica Hamill played the double life without a single apology, and the private scenes worked precisely because she never softened the public ones. She was 37 when the series began. 5 Emmy nominations arrived from the part. She never won one of them. Hamill was the daughter of a Philadelphia carpenter. She graduated from Temple University and typed letters for a company that manufactured ironing board covers until the modeling agent Eileen Ford found her. Then came the last cigarette commercial ever shown on American television, a Virginia Slim spot that aired 1 minute before midnight on the 1st of January 1971. Her film debut the same year was an uncredited modeling part in Clute. She married the actor Michael Irving in 1971 and divorced him in 1981, the year this show premiered. No children appear on her record and no second marriage either. Here is the part of her life that almost nobody knows. In 1972, Hamill and her husband bought Marilyn Monroe's house in Brentwood, the house where Monroe had died 10 years earlier. They hired a contractor to replace the roof and remodel, and what that contractor found inside the walls was a sophisticated eavesdropping and telephone tapping system wired into every room. Those components were not sold to the public in 1962. A retired Justice Department official, quoted by the writer Anthony Summers, described them as standard FBI issue. Stripping the equipment out reportedly cost the couple $100,000. That is what the contractor found and what Summers reported. And it is worth saying plainly that no court and no investigation ever established who put it there. She is 82. A new life, taking care of business, and the series Philly and Third Watch filled the years after The Badge, and her last screen role was Jack Shephard's mother on Lost, a part she came back to on and off between 2004 and 2010. Davenport spent 7 years fighting about evidence in a courtroom that did not exist. The strangest evidence in Hamill's real life was sitting inside her own walls, and no court ever heard a word of it. Detective J.D. LaRue would sell you a stolen watch in the morning and save your life in the afternoon. Kiel Martin played him loose and quick, letting the desperation show in the eyes just often enough that the audience kept forgiving him, and he did it for 140 episodes across all 7 seasons. He was born Kiel Urban Mai Euler in Pittsburgh, named after a city in Germany in honor of the family line, and raised in Hialeah, Florida. Drama study at 3 different schools followed, along with a brief spell in the Army, and in 1967 he signed as a universal contract player on the recommendation of the actress June Havoc. That same year, a motorcycle crash broke 15 bones in his body. 3 marriages came and went, all of them short. Claudia Martin, the daughter of Dean Martin, married him in 1969 and left 2 years later, and they had a daughter named Jessie. Christina Montoyo married him in 1978 and was gone by 1980. Joanne La Palma married him in 1982 and was gone by 1984. Now the part that the audience at home could not possibly have understood. In the first season, the writers gave LaRue a drinking problem, and Martin, who was drinking heavily himself, had to perform it. Stephen Bochco built that storyline for exactly that reason. It was an intervention staged on network television in front of millions of people, And by 1984, the producers were requiring him to complete a rehabilitation program as a condition of the job. Bochco later said that Martin never had another drink or took another drug for the rest of his life. That life had 6 years left in it. Lung cancer was found in January 1990 while he was appearing in a play in Calgary. He went home to Rancho Mirage, California, and on the 28th of December that year, his heart gave out at the age of 46. His body was cremated and the ashes were scattered, which means there is nowhere for anybody to go and stand. LaRue talked his way out of everything for 7 seasons. Martin got clean, stayed clean for the rest of his life, and ran out of that life anyway. Tell me in the comments whether writing a man's real addiction into his own character was a kindness or a cruelty. That argument has run for 40 years, and I want to know where you land. The next man on this list played 2 different characters on this show, 3 seasons apart, and the first of them shoots himself when a scam falls apart. Sal Benedetto was a corrupt detective who takes his own life when his scheme collapses. Norman Bunce was rumpled, loud, morally elastic, and the funniest man in the building, solving cases the way a sledgehammer solves a lock. Dennis Franz played both of them, 3 seasons apart, and the writers called the pair doppelgangers. 38 years old when the first man walked in, he was 42 when the second one walked out. He gave Bunce a bruised decency underneath all the bullying, which is why the character earned his own spin-off, Beverly Hills Bunce, and why the audience never once wanted him fired. Franz was born Dennis Franz Schlock II in Maywood, Illinois, to German immigrants who both ended up working for the post office. He finished high school in 1962, worked his way through Wilbur Wright College and then Southern Illinois University, took a degree in speech and theater in 1968, and was drafted almost immediately afterwards, serving 11 months with 2 airborne divisions in Vietnam. Chicago is where the acting started, at the Organic Theater Company. Coming to Hollywood with classical stage training, he found an industry that looked at his face and saw a police officer and nothing else, and the guest spots that followed were Cops on the A-Team, Cops on Hunter, Cops Everywhere. That same typecasting eventually made him one of the most decorated actors in the history of television. 4 Primetime Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe, and 3 Screen Actors Guild Awards all came out of 12 seasons as Detective Andy Cy P.O.H. Weitz on NYPD Blue, a character Bravo later placed among the 100 greatest in television. He married Joni Zek in 1995, 13 years after they first met, and became stepfather to her 2 daughters. Acting stopped for him in 2005, on the day NYPD Blue ended, and he has never gone back, though he has said he stays open to the right opportunity. He is 81, and he spends his summers at a lake house in northern Idaho. Bunce would have worked until somebody carried him out of the building. Franz put 4 Emmy Awards on a shelf, walked out at 60, and has not stood on a set since. Faye Furillo arrived at full volume. The ex-wife with a grievance, a child, and no intention of waiting her turn, and then the writing quietly turned her into a victim's advocate with a desk of her own. Barbara Bosson made the shrieking funny and the growth believable, which is a very hard pair of things to do at once. 5 consecutive Emmy nominations came from The Part, a 6th arrived years later for Murder One, and she never won any of them. Bosson grew up in a Pennsylvania coal town and finished high school in Florida in 1957. She worked as a secretary for a theater company and as a Playboy bunny to pay for acting classes, then enrolled at Carnegie Mellon University at the age of 26. That campus is where the whole circle began, because she met and married the writer Stephen Bochco there in 1970. She is also the person who suggested the show be built in 4 and 5 episode story arcs, which is the structural idea that made serialized network drama possible on American television. At the end of the 5th season, the president of MTM fired her husband from the show he had created, citing cost overruns and the fact that the series had passed the 100 episodes needed for syndication. Bosson filmed 3 episodes of the 6th season and walked. She said the incoming executive producer wanted her salary cut and wanted Faye turned back into the shrew she had started out as. Hooper Man and Cop Rock followed with Bochco, then 2 years as the prosecutor Miriam Grasso on Murder One, plus L.A. Law, NYPD Blue and Murder, she wrote. The marriage survived another 12 years, and ended in divorce in 1997, after 27 years. Her death came on the 18th of February 2023, in a hospital in Santa Monica, aged 83, surrounded by family. No cause was ever released. Her son Jesse, a director himself now, wrote that she had more spirit and zest than you could shake a stick at, and that when she loved you, you felt it without a doubt. Faye spent 5 seasons fighting for a place inside a building that did not want her there. Bosson invented the shape of the show and was the first person that building let go. 2 names are still to come, and one of those men died only 2 years ago. Subscribe if you want to know how the rest of this squad room turned out. Belker bit people. That is the whole sentence, and everybody who watched this show remembers it. Bruce Weitz worked undercover as Filth and Fury, growling at suspects, calling every one of them a name, and then answering the telephone in a small apologetic voice because his mother was on the line. He built an entire comedy and an entire tragedy out of one man who could not switch the act off across 142 episodes. 37 years old when the series began, he was 43 when it ended, and in between he had turned a snarling street animal into the character people still quote first. 6 Emmy nominations and 2 Golden Globe nominations came from that performance, and he won the Emmy in 1984. Norwalk, Connecticut is where he grew up, the son of a homemaker named Sybil and a father who owned a liquor store. Early work was small and slow, an uncredited Columbo appearance in 1975, a soap opera the year after that, a Quincy episode the year after that. There is one strange thread running through his private life. His first wife was the actress Cecilia Hart, and after they divorced in 1980, she married James Earl Jones and stayed married to him until she died of ovarian cancer at 68. Weitz married Vivian Davis in 1986, and they are together still, with 1 son. 3 of the most decorated voices in American acting were tangled together by that one divorce, and none of the 3 ever discussed it in public. 83 is his age now. The sitcom Anything But Love came first. Then guest turns on NYPD Blue and The X-Files. Then the films Deep Impact and Half Past Dead. 5 of the years after that went into playing a mob boss on General Hospital, 234 episodes of him. And in 2001, the neighborhood of Reseda in Los Angeles made him its honorary mayor. Television's most feral detective became a daytime crime boss, and then a suburban mayor with a ceremonial sash. The snarl, all of it, was always the performance. One more name here spent close to 20 years reading aloud to 8-year-olds under a title that none of his fans would recognize. Howard Hunter wanted an armored vehicle for a problem that needed a telephone call. He arrived at every meeting with a pipe, a pressed uniform, and a tactical plan nobody had requested, and James B. Sikking played the absurdity absolutely straight across 144 episodes. That is exactly why the man was funny, and why, when the writing turned on him, he was unexpectedly sad. Sikking built the character directly on one of his own drill sergeants from Army basic training at Fort Bragg. He was the youngest of 5 children born to Arthur and Sue Sikking, raised in Los Angeles by a mother who co-founded a church in Santa Monica. 46 years old at the premiere, he was 53 by the finale. He served through the Korean War, graduated from UCLA in 1959, and paid for the degree by working the university stage and sitting in a lifeguard chair on the county beaches. His first Emmy nomination for Hunter did not arrive until 1984, 3 seasons in, and it was the only one the role ever brought him. He married the cookbook author Flor Ian Kaplan in 1962 and stayed married to her for 62 years, with 2 children and 4 grandchildren. The work never really stopped. He played Doogie Howser's father for 4 years, then a police captain on Brooklyn South, which brought him a People's Choice Award in 1998. More than 40 films carry his name, among them Ordinary People, Outland, Star Trek III, and The Pelican Brief, and his credits run from 1954 all the way to 2012. Away from every camera, he volunteered for close to 20 years as Jim the Reader, sitting with 3rd graders through a Screen Actors Guild program, and he fished competitively in the Florida Keys. He died at home in Los Angeles on the 13th of July 2024, aged 90, from complications of dementia. His family released no burial details at all. Hunter treated every incident as the war he had been waiting his whole life for. The actor spent his last decades reading picture books to children and putting fish back in the water. None of the four who are gone left a grave on the public record. The warning that closed every roll call outlived the man who said it by 42 years.